When we have an addiction in our lives, whether that be drugs, drink, sex, porn, alcohol, food, or cigarettes, it is usually because we are unable to deal with an emotion we are feeling, an unmet emotional need. So we run to that addiction for comfort, usually. And sometimes we may not run to that addiction for comfort, but we may go to that addiction to hold us in a space because it makes us feel unworthy and unlovable and not good enough. So it's on the same level, it represents how we are feeling, so we will go to it. Often we can habitually go to our addiction, not because it's what is going to make us feel good or feel better, but it's something that we just habitually do. When we have an addiction, we can feel quite emotionally overwhelmed by our unmet emotional needs, but also overwhelmed by our own sense of shame and guilt. When we have an addiction, we may be quite happy to ruin our relationships rather than lose our substance. We may hide our addiction, be in denial ourselves. We may become habitual liars to hide our addiction, which in relative, our relationships suffer because of that. We may poo-poo people's concerns about our addictions if we're quite open with them, or minimize that they are a problem at all. What I've personally found is that when we have this sense, and when working with clients, when we have this sense that we need to go to what we are addicted to, is to take a pause and actually become our own witness. So say there is this desire to watch some porn, there is a desire to take a drug, we suddenly get this urge to drink or fill our mouths with food to suppress, is to take a pause and ask what we are feeling there, is to get a hang on what the feeling is that then creates us to take the action to take an addiction, take our substance. So for a while, for me, I would get this heartache, and it actually felt like my heart was going to break, like overwhelming pain. And then I would reach for the substance that I felt was going to take away that pain. And then it came to a point where I would then pause and I would actually go into that pain. And it was overwhelming, totally overwhelming. I would spend a lot of time crying, shaking, panic attacks. But through this, there became this understanding of what it was in me, this feeling that it was in me that was causing me to reach for this substance. And that feeling was actually not feeling good enough and not feeling lovable. So instead of running and reaching for something to suppress that, I actually attended to and listened to myself. And from there, I was able to meet my own emotional unmet needs. Often the unmet needs are not present, they're not happening that day. They are something that from our past have just been built upon and built upon. And then we have found ourselves in relationships that have supported that emotion that is not being met. So it just builds upon, and therefore drives us closer and closer and closer to the substance that we feel at that time is either going to take away that pain, take away that overwhelming emotion, or and suppress it. So it really is, I feel, to take a step back and start to listen to the feeling that then makes us reach for our substance of addiction. Often when we have an addiction, we are lonely and we are really feeling quite emotionally overwhelmed, and so the easiest thing to do is to escape those emotions from what we are feeling inside. So it just takes us, these addictions just take us further and further and further away from being who we are and our authentic self.